Welcome to our deep dive on fear,
Mm-hmm.
but not the kind that, keeps you up at night.
Right.
We're exploring fear as a positive force,
Yeah.
using all the stuff that you sent over.
Interesting.
Like it's a compass, not a stop sign.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. The material you selected really goes into how we can reframe fear as a catalyst for growth.
It's funny because I think our initial reaction to fear is to just
Avoid it.
avoid it. Yeah,
Totally.
completely.
Yeah.
But the author makes this really compelling argument that a lack of fear might actually be a sign that we're not stretching ourselves enough.
It's like staying in your comfort zone forever.
Right.
It's cozy, but you're not going to discover anything new or exciting there.
Right.
And what's fascinating is that fear often acts as that signal.
Yeah.
Like letting us know we're stepping outside that comfort zone and entering the territory where real change happens.
Okay, so instead of viewing fear as this big, scary monster,
Yeah.
maybe we should see it as a signpost that says, hey, you're on the right track. This is where things get interesting.
Precisely. One of the first hurdles we need to overcome is understanding that fear often stems from emotion
Okay.
rather than logic. Think about it. How many times have you worried about something that never actually came to pass?
Oh my gosh, all the time.
Right.
I'm like the queen of worst case scenarios.
Yeah.
It's exhausting, to be honest.
You're not alone. The author highlights this tendency we have to conjure up these really vivid, often catastrophic outcomes in our minds that rarely, if ever, actually happen. There's even a quote that captures this perfectly. Fear stands for false events appearing real.
Wow, that is so true. It's like our brains are wired to just anticipate the worst,
Yeah.
even when there's no evidence to support those fears.
And that's where things get tricky because while those fears might be based on false events, they feel incredibly real in the moment.
Yeah.
It's like when we were kids and convinced there was a monster under the bed.
Oh my gosh, yes. The monster under the bed, the creepy shadows in the closet, pure nightmare fuel for a 6-year-old.
Right. It's a perfect analogy because as adults, we still have those monsters lurking in the shadows. Fear of failure, rejection, even success, believe it or not. But just like those childhood fears, they often lose their power when we shine a light on them.
Okay, so how do we shine a light on these adult monsters? Is it as simple as just acknowledging them?
That's a great first step. But the source material goes deeper,
Okay.
suggesting that we should actually view these fears as prompts for action.
Hmm.
It's almost like fear is pointing us directly towards the things we need to do to grow.
I like that.
Let's say you're terrified of making an important sales call.
Okay.
Instead of avoiding it, that fear is actually your cue to pick up the phone.
Well,
Feeling anxious about giving a presentation, that's your signal to start practicing.
it's like fear is this giant flashing neon sign
Yeah.
pointing us towards our next big breakthrough. Like
Yeah.
it's saying, hey, this is where the magic happens. This
Yeah.
is where you level up.
I like that the author actually digs into the science behind this,
Okay.
drawing on some fascinating research from psychology.
Interesting.
Studies have shown that the more we avoid something out of fear, the stronger that fear becomes. It's
Yeah.
almost like we're feeding the monster under the bed by refusing to look under it.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of Amy Cuddy's work on power posing?
Vaguely.
Remind me.
She's a social psychologist who did this amazing research on how our body language can actually impact our hormones and in turn our feelings of confidence.
I see.
She found that even if you don't feel confident by adopting expansive, powerful postures like standing tall with your arms outstretched,
Okay.
you can actually increase your testosterone levels and decrease cortisol, which is the stress hormone.
Well, it's like tricking your body
Yeah.
into feeling more confident,
Yeah.
which then makes you actually be more confident. Exactly. And it ties directly into this idea of using fear as a prompt for action. Instead of letting fear paralyze you, you're choosing to act in a way that actually counteracts the physiological effects of fear.
Okay, my mind is officially blown.
Yeah.
So we've talked about acknowledging our fears and seeing them as prompts for action.
Yeah.
But the author also uses this phrase, starving fear. What exactly does that mean?
That's where time comes into play. The more we dwell on our fears, allowing them to stew and simmer in our minds,
Yeah.
the more powerful they become. Procrastination is basically fear's best friend.
Oh, that's good.
The source material uses an example of someone named John who needs to make a client call, but he keeps putting it off. He's allowing his anxiety to build as he imagines all the ways the call could go wrong.
Yeah.
The longer he waits, the more that fear grows.
It's like he's marinating in his anxiety, letting it really soak in. That's definitely not a recipe for success.
Right. The author argues that the antidote to this fear-fueled procrastination is action. the more time we give fear to take root.
Okay.
The harder it becomes to pull ourselves out of its grip. In John's case, if he had just picked up the phone and made the call right away, he might have been surprised by the outcome. It probably wouldn't have been nearly as bad as he imagined.
It's like ripping off a bandage. The anticipation is always so much worse than the actual event. So are you saying that acting quickly is the key to starving fear?
It's a huge part of it. But of course, there are times when we can't just jump into things head first.
Yeah.
What if we need to prepare for a big presentation or a job interview?
That's a good point. There's a difference between thoughtful preparation and using preparation as an excuse to procrastinate.
Right.
So how do we know if we're genuinely preparing versus just hiding behind a to-do list?
That's a question we should unpack in the next part of our deep dive, because the author offers some really interesting insights into the difference between productive preparation and fear-driven procrastination.
It's getting really interesting. I'm already starting to look at fear in a whole new light.
I think you'll find the next part even more insightful. We're going to dive into some specific techniques for confronting fear head-on. The author even uses this powerful metaphor of eating your fears, which I think you'll find quite intriguing.
Okay, so we left off talking about the difference between genuine preparation and just, using preparation as a shield to hide behind. I'm ready to unpack this procrastination trap. How can we tell the difference?
You hit the nail on the head. It often comes down to recognizing when fear is in the driver's seat.
Okay.
The material you provided suggests that we shift our focus to intentionality.
Okay.
Are our actions fueled by a genuine desire to learn and grow and prepare? Or are we just spinning our wheels trying to outrun our anxieties?
So when we're truly preparing, there's a sense of purpose behind what we're doing, right? We're actually like absorbing the information and using it to move towards a specific goal. It's not just busy work disguised as preparation.
Exactly. Think about it this way. Imagine you're researching for a presentation. If you're genuinely engaged, you're probably highlighting key points.
Right.
Making connections and thinking about how to best present this information to your audience. But when fear is calling the shots, you might find yourself rereading the same paragraph over and over, unable to focus because your mind is racing with what ifs.
Oh, I know that feeling all too well.
No.
Like you're going through the motions, but not actually retaining anything.
Right.
The fear creates this like mental fog
Yeah.
that makes it impossible to concentrate.
The source material actually touches on the physiological response to fear. The classic fight or flight mode. When we're in that state, our bodies are flooded with hormones like adrenaline and cortisol.
Right.
It's designed to help us survive in life or death situations.
Right.
But it can wreak havoc on our ability to think clearly and make rational decisions.
So in a way, procrastination is a form of self-sabotage.
Yeah.
We're so consumed by fear that we end up creating the very outcome we're trying to avoid.
That's a great way to put it. And it becomes a vicious cycle.
Right.
The more we procrastinate, the more the fear grows. And the harder it becomes to break free.
So what's the key to escaping this procrastination trap? Is it just a matter of willpower?
Willpower certainly plays a role, but the author suggests a more nuanced approach.
Okay.
They talk about cultivating self-awareness, becoming more attuned to the subtle ways fear manifests in our lives. For example, notice how your body feels when you're about to do something that makes you anxious. Do you get butterflies in your stomach?
Oh, yeah.
Do your palms sweat?
Yeah.
Do you feel a tightness in your chest?
Oh, absolutely. My heart starts racing.
Yeah.
My thoughts become all jumbled.
Right.
And I suddenly have the urge to clean my entire apartment.
Yeah.
It's like my body is trying to distract me from the thing I'm actually supposed to be doing.
That's your body's fear response kicking in.
Wow.
And by becoming more aware of these physical sensations, you can start to interrupt that automatic fear-driven reaction.
Right.
It's about recognizing that just because you feel fear doesn't mean you have to let it control you.
So it's not about eliminating fear altogether,
Right.
but rather learning to manage it, to work with it instead of against it.
Exactly. The author emphasizes that everyone experiences fear. But successful people develop strategies for navigating those feelings in a way that allows them to keep moving forward.
Okay, so let's say we've mastered the art of identifying fear-driven procrastination, and we're committed to taking action despite our anxieties. But what about those moments when fear just completely overwhelms us? You know those times when it feels like a tidal wave crashing over you, making it impossible to think straight, let alone take action? How do we handle those situations?
Well, the author introduces a rather intriguing concept for dealing with these moments of intense fear. They call it eating your fears, and it's a powerful metaphor for confronting fear head on.
Okay, eating your fears. This sounds intense. I'm intrigued, but also a little terrified. What does that even look like in real life?
I know it sounds a bit strange, but stick with me. The idea is to shift your perspective on fear. Instead of seeing it as this insurmountable obstacle or a monster lurking in the shadows, you're reframing it as something you can confront and even overcome.
So it's about reclaiming our power in the face of fear. Almost like we're taking a bite out of it and saying, hey, you don't control me anymore.
That's a great way to put it. The author suggests a few techniques for actually eating your fears.
Okay.
One is to literally visualize yourself consuming that fear.
Huh, interesting.
Imagine taking a big bite out of it, chewing it up and swallowing it down.
Okay, I can see how that would be a powerful mental exercise. It's like symbolically dismantling that fear piece by piece.
Exactly. And the more you practice this visualization, the less intimidating fear becomes. You start to see it as something you can manage rather than something that controls you. The material also highlights the importance of positive self-talk. Instead of getting caught up in those negative thought loops, I can't do this, I'm going to fail, this is going to be a disaster, you consciously replace those thoughts with positive affirmations.
So it's like giving yourself a pep talk, reminding yourself of your strengths and past successes. It's about building yourself up instead of tearing yourself down.
Right. And this doesn't mean ignoring the challenges or pretending that everything is perfect. It's about acknowledging the fear, but choosing to focus on the positive, on the things you can control.
And I imagine this ties into the idea of taking action,
Right.
even if it's just one small step at a time.
Absolutely. The author emphasizes that action is the ultimate antidote to fear. Don't wait until you feel completely fearless because that day may never come. Instead, focus on taking small, manageable steps. Each step, no matter how tiny, builds your confidence and chips away at the power of fear.
It's like the saying, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Even if that first step is just putting on your running shoes or like drafting an outline for your presentation, it's still a step in the right direction.
And each step you take creates momentum. You start to see that you can do things that once seemed impossible, that you are capable of handling challenges. And that's when fear starts to lose its grip. It's no longer this giant looming monster. It's something you can acknowledge, manage, and even use to your advantage.
This has been such an incredible deep dive. I'm walking away with a completely different understanding of fear. Instead of viewing it as an enemy, I'm starting to see it as a potential ally, a guidepost pointing me towards growth and new possibilities.
That's the beauty of reframing our perspectives. Fear is a natural part of the human experience, but it doesn't have to control us. We have the power to choose how we respond to it.
So the next time we feel that familiar twinge of fear, instead of shying away, we should ask ourselves, what is this fear trying to teach me? Where is it guiding me? And what action can I take to move through it?
That's a fantastic takeaway. And remember, courage isn't the absence of fear. It's action despite fear. Everyone feels fear, but those who achieve great things learn to harness that fear and use it as fuel to propel themselves forward.
Thank you so much for guiding us through this deep dive into the unexpected power of fear. It's been truly illuminating. And to our listeners, we hope you've gained some valuable insights, and more importantly, some practical tools to help you navigate your own fears and turn them into catalysts for growth and success.
Remember, you have the power to choose. Will you let fear paralyze you, or will you eat it? The choice is yours.